All right, guys, let's talk about it. Danielle Smith, traitor or best representative for Alberta out there? Okay. So Danielle Smith, went down to Mar-a-Lago to bend the knee the other day. She met with President Trump. She kissed the ring, right? Got to meet him twice. Pictures came out with her and Kevin O'Leary. Um, and In her post about it, she said, over the last 24 hours, I had the opportunity to meet President Trump at Mar-a-Lago and at his golf club this morning. We had a friendly, constructive conversation during which I emphasized the mutual importance of the U.S.-Canada energy relationship and specifically how hundreds of thousands of Americans' jobs are supported by energy exports from Alberta. I was able to have similar discussions with several key allies in the incoming administration and was encouraged to hear the support for a strong energy security relationship with Canada. On behalf of Albertans, I will continue to engage in constructive dialogue and diplomacy with the incoming administration and elected federal state officials of both parties. And will do all I can to further Alberta's and Canada's interests. The United States and Canada are both proud independent nations with one of the most important security alliances on earth, the largest economic partnership in history. We need to preserve our independence while we grow this critical partnership for the benefit of Canadians and Americans for generations to come. So this was her first post when she went down there. She kissed the ring. She bent the knee. And honestly, somebody should be talking to Trump. Danielle Smith would probably do good in the room. I kind of think, with Kevin O'Leary taking her there, it's kind of like Kevin O'Leary's trying to get his TikTok deal done because, he's getting a sweet deal on TikTok because the government's about to ban it. And he's like, hey, Trump, help me get this deal done. I'll bring you Canadian oil. I know you threatened the Canadians with tariffs, and unfortunately, Danielle Smith, this part of the visit was great. Was great, actually. You know what I mean? She stepped out. She probably went to go defend Alberta. I thought that was great. Then she came out with a tweet where she's responding to her visit, right? So let's just hear what she says and let's talk about it.
Hinted a little bit earlier that if there is some sort of export ban on Alberta oil, that would precipitate a national unity crisis. From your perspective as Premier of Alberta, what does that look like other than, I don't know, people being mad in the streets? Is it a separation referendum? What are we talking about when you say national unity crisis?
Well, I can't predict what Albertans would do, but as you know, the part of my strategy over the last 2 years has been to say that we can have a constructive relationship with Canada, and I would hope that would continue to be the case. Here's the thing I find irritating about Eastern politicians making that argument. The reason I find it irritating is because we could have had Energy East, which would have expanded our ability to support our friends in Eastern Canada and also been an export market off the East Coast. We could have had Northern Gateway, which would have expanded and supported export markets in a more substantial way off the West Coast. And Eastern politicians advocated against those things. And so we went to work on expanding our access to the United States with additional egress, with twinning, with looping. We did that because the rest of the country wasn't interested in having that conversation. So to now make the argument that that's a point of leverage is going to be very, very irritating, not only to me, but also to my fellow Albertans. If they want to start the conversation by saying, gosh, maybe we should have had Energy East and Northern Gateway. Let's restart that so that we're not so dependent on one customer. I am more than happy to have that conversation. And I hope that's where the conversation goes. But having been so hostile to Alberta's interests and having canceled so many important projects that would have allowed us to have a diversified customer base, it's outrageous to me that they would even propose it.
So this is her expressing her irritation that, they would even propose shutting off the oil to America. I mean, I have to say, like, if you're trying to negotiate, especially with a guy like Trump, and he's stepped in it, like you kind of need to at least say, oh, I'm willing to do this, or I'm willing to take it here. That's all anybody's saying. But I guess she's using it as a point to like get her point across about this. I think overall it weakens Canada's negotiating hand because it's kind of like Trump's like I've kind of infiltrated, uh, you know, you guys, and your biggest export. I've got assurances that you won't fuck around and find out. So I'm not sure what assurances Danielle Smith got while she was in Mar-a-Lago, but then to like sing against the rest of Canadians openly when we're all facing a threat, I don't know. Just doesn't yeah, doesn't seem like a good plan. And clearly she's pushing that. Maybe, you know what I mean? Because that helps Trump get a lot better of a deal out of Canada if he knows energy's off the table. And that makes Trump a little money, which makes signing Kevin O'Leary's deal a little bit sweeter. You know what I mean? So then the ministers' meeting. Okay, they all went to Ottawa. Everybody knew we were having a ministers' meeting. Everybody knew this Team Canada meeting was like all over the news and stuff like that. But she stayed in the States, which was kind of telling that like she wasn't really into it. Like, cool, she was there, video. I heard the BC Premier call this like, economic war, which I think is pretty accurate, if we're being honest. But anyways, after that Premier's meeting, she wouldn't sign what all the premiers said, or the letter that they sent to the U.S. And instead, during the press conference, she wrote this post, and it came out, and it was really Trumpian, like, you know what I mean? I had a constructive discussion with my fellow premiers on how best to deal with a threat from tariffs coming from the U.S. administration. We agreed on several strategies, and I look forward to continuing to work with them on this critical issue. However, federal government officials continue to publicly and privately float the idea of cutting off energy supply to the U.S. and imposing export tariffs on Alberta energy and other products to the United States. Until these threats cease, Alberta will not be able to fully support the federal government's plan in dealing with the threatened tariffs. Alberta will simply not agree to export tariffs on our energy or other products, nor do we support the ban on exports of these same products. We will take whatever actions needed to protect the livelihoods of Albertans from such a destructive federal policy. We also urge our entire nation to use this tariff threat as an opportunity to correct the misguided direction of the country and commence multiple infrastructure projects that focus on developing and upgrading our exporting our oil, gas, natural resources instead of effectively landlocking them and keeping us fully reliant on one primary customer. I will be traveling to Washington, D.C. this week for the inauguration and will be returning to the United States several times over the coming months to meet with the U.S. lawmakers and officials and continue to make the case against imposition of tariffs on Canadian products. Strengthen and grow our trading relationship between these two great independent nations. Okay, and it starts with the American flag, and then there is a Canadian flag there. Okay, good. So I mean, that was a lot of words to say America first. Let's just call it what it was. You know what I mean? I don't know what kind of deal. It just kind of sounds to me like she got some kind of assurance or something at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know what kind of deal she got or if she was offered anything. I just know she went, bent the knee, and got her face filled with Kevin O'Leary and Donald Trump's talking points. Like, this is gold. This is perfect for them. Perfect. I think they said like $150 billion of our exports is oil. So that's, I think, like, 30 to 40% of what we export to them. And now Trump doesn't have to worry at all. Doesn't even have to worry about it. Doesn't even have to think like, are they crazy? Are they going to do anything nuts? Don't even have to worry about it. Don't even have to worry about it. We got Danielle Smith in there. We're good. It does take a lot of the negotiating power away from Canada. I agree with her. We need to update our infrastructure, get more than one customer, 100%. But I don't really agree with her Trumpian tactics. And I think she's probably, inadvertently, like, you're hurting Pierre Poilievre, okay? Because some people that were moving over to conservative were like, okay, yeah, we can do this. Like, he's making sense and stuff like that. And then now we have Danielle Smith going, batshit crazy against Canada. Just, you know what I mean? Like, sure, defending Alberta, whatever, but unity crisis, like, just crazy. Like, and then being on vacation during this time right before war, I don't know, maybe it was her time, maybe, it just seems like this might be a time to be working on those relationships. And some people will say that's why she's in the States, but like, you got to do press conferences, then you got to do all that stuff. And because she wasn't there, CTV did get a hold of Naheed Nenshi, who is
We invited the premier on our program.
Who is the NDP leader for Alberta. He would be her opposition. Last government here was NDP. And now he's got to answer for this. So, and let's see what he says.
Tonight, but she declined as she's on vacation. So we brought in Alberta's NDP leader, Naheed Nenshi, for his response. Hi, Mr. Nenshi. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks so much.
The premier has made her position on the possibility of export taxes on energy exports or, a tariff heading out or the blocking of those exports pretty known. What is your position on that?
Well, here's the thing. The premier has had the worst week in politics. Those of us who are in politics cringe at what has happened to her. She started off on such a high because she was able to get to Mar-a-Lago. She was able to get Trump's ear. But then she realized that she couldn't charm the guy, and he told her to go pound sand.
Which is so true. Like, she did start off on such a high, like, everybody was like, dang, in the weeks leading up to this, she gave some interviews that were like, they were spot on. You know what I mean? I know people that, like, vocalize that they hate Danielle Smith, but were fully in support of her up until this.
And now she's kind of stuck. And all she's got is her old talking points that she's been repeating for many years, even since before she was in politics. And here's the thing. You don't go into a poker game with your cards face up. You don't go to a used car lot and say, this is the car of my dreams, take my money. And that appears to be her negotiating strategy.
Exactly. It's like a negotiating strategy. She could have sounded off about it. She could have gone to the premier's meeting, asked for those concessions that we are going to build that infrastructure. There's a lot of things she could have done quietly. And then in the end, if they were going to turn off the oil, then go nuclear. But why go nuclear off right out the gate. I don't understand.
She thought the charm would win the day. But of course, it's not going to win the day. And we need to be much more thoughtful and much more strategic and not just play all our cards up front.
And I certainly do understand that pushback, and that's what we heard from all the other premiers. We were on site yesterday for the meeting. But my question was also about your positioning, and if you would be okay with that kind of a tax on oil that Alberta sends to the U.S., for example, or even the possibility of blocking it, if it gets to the point where the feds feel that would be a commensurate response to whatever Donald Trump does.
Yeah, well, let's take them one by one. The first is that the premier has maybe because she doesn't understand the difference, really confused the idea of retaliatory tariffs, which is tariffs that we would put on U.S. goods imported here. The example everyone uses for some reason is Florida orange juice, which even Pierre Poilievre says is what we need to be doing, with the idea of an export tax. And let's be clear, the export tax on oil only happens in a very specific set of circumstances. And it basically means that, number one, Trump carves out oil and gas and doesn't put his own tariff on it. And so then we'll put a tariff on it anyway. That set of circumstances is next.
Which she's already stated that there's going to be no carve out. Unless she knows there's going to be a carve out, nobody else knows that there's going to be a carve out.
Too impossible to happen. And I don't really see the benefit of it. If there are actually people who are talking about putting an export tax on something Trump is already tariffing, I will really ask them what economists they've been talking to, because it makes no sense.
So what about the idea of blocking sending it at all? Because that's the other thing she's being specific about opposing.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because she says she fights for Alberta, and I remember that Peter Lougheed, who is the greatest fighter for Alberta ever, did in fact block exports of oil to the rest of Canada. But the challenge here is that's physically extraordinarily difficult to do because, of course, much of the oil that is serving Eastern Canada, because it's cheaper to go through the U.S., goes through the U.S. So if there were any serious conversations about this, which I don't really think there are, I think she's fear-mongering, those would have to be very hard, very technical conversations, because it's just not something you can't turn the tap off tomorrow without massive repercussions. I cannot imagine a world where this would be a great idea. But again, you don't take your cards off the table before you start.
Ultimately, though, what is the difference then between your position and the premier's, other than the way in which you're describing it, like the communication style? Because you're essentially saying something very similar to what she is. She said it doesn't make sense to block oil. It wouldn't really work with the way that pipelines work, and that an export tax would be a negative thing economically, which is exactly what you just said.
Guys, that's the NDP leader. Okay, so for the American people that are watching, that, like, he's left of Democrats. He's like a Green Party leader. And she's asking, what's the difference? So, like, which is why her making, like, doing this Trumpian thing of tweeting and, not, like, not coming to this premier's meeting, which I know it's just tradition, and, like, who cares about tradition in the age of Trump, right? But, like, well, what is the point of all that? Like, if the NDP leader is like, what? Like, I would call an economist if they did that. Like, maybe she falls in line and she's just doing this to raise the issue. I don't know. I really don't understand.
Well, I think it's a little different, because what she's doing is she's fear-mongering. She basically, having allied herself with Trump so much, she can't use him as the bogeyman. So she's going to her usual bogeyman, which is Ottawa, and now all the other provinces, including the conservative provinces.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think she is trying to use this situation for leverage. I just think that, like, it's not the right time to fight us, you know what I mean? And like, you've got an in because, and I think she's taken herself from the status of queen to pawn, because now she's like kind of a pawn that O'Leary's playing to get his TikTok deal, is kind of the way I read it. I'll bring you Alberta oil. Like, you don't have to worry about them tariffing us, right? And fuck, that's got to be a huge relief for Trump. So, of course, yeah, O'Leary, no problem. You get the deal on TikTok. I'll make sure it gets done. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I heard Mr. Beast's buying it. Nah, Mr. Beast, you should have called Danielle Smith and then gone to kiss the ring with her. That's what you needed to do. I don't think you're getting TikTok. I don't know, guys. Am I way off? Let me know in the comments below, as always, and I'll see you on the next video.